Hi guys, welcome back to CRYPTID'S Den. It honestly means so much to see you here again. It feels like sitting down with an old friend. These stories, these mysteries, they're more than just tales. They're moments we share, thoughts we turn over together. So tell me, where are you watching from tonight? I'd really love to hear from you. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe and leave a comment. This little space wouldn't be the same without you. Now, let's get into it. I never thought I'd say this, but the creature that took my daughter wasn't trying to hurt her. It was trying to mother her. That night in the Allegheny Forest, Mira, my 4-year-old, vanished without a sound. Panic ripped through me as I followed strange footprints into the trees. And then I saw it, a towering, human-shaped beast cradling her. But there was no violence, no blood, just silence and tenderness. It was holding Mira like she was its own. The truth no one tells you is that grief isn't just human. That thing, whatever it was, had lost a child too, and it was trying to fill the hole in its heart the only way it knew how. I'm Raylan Quinn, a former soldier. After losing my wife to cancer, I took my daughters on a cross-country trip to fulfill her dying wish. I thought I'd seen pain before, but nothing prepared me for the moment I realized. Love transcends species. This isn't a story about monsters. It's about two broken hearts, mine and hers, finding each other in the wilderness. If you've ever lost someone, or ever been a parent, this story will shake you. Because once you see it, you'll never look at the wild the same way again. The fire crackled low beside me, chewing slowly through the pages like it knew they mattered. The stars above Kentucky were sharp and unblinking, just like her eyes used to be before the light went out for good. I held the last page in my hand. Her handwriting curled at the edges, ink smudged from tears, mine or hers, I don't know anymore. Her voice echoed in my head like a song I'd forgotten the words to. Take the children to where the wind still remembers my name. I fed the page to the flames. Behind me, the van creaked softly as the night settled in. Mira and June were asleep in the back, curled under old quilts that still smelled like her. I watched the smoke twist up, swallowed by the dark. It wasn't about closure. That's a lie people tell themselves when they want permission to move on. I wasn't moving on. I was following something. A whisper. A map drawn in grief. That's how I ended up staring at a cracked road sign halfway buried in vine and rust. Route 119. The main highway had long vanished behind me in the rear view, replaced by narrow asphalt veins winding into the Allegheny Forest. The map I had was old, so old the corners were soft like felt, and the ink had faded into memory. She'd circled it and read, "This road. This detour." So I took it. The tires hummed as we crossed into the trees. Autumn had peeled the leaves off in layers, red, gold, brown, spinning through the air like something fleeing. Wind rushed across the windshield in fits and starts, like it too had something to say but couldn't find the words. I rolled down the window halfway. The air was colder here, deeper, somewhere behind us. The static on the radio crackled and then died completely. Just the silence now, and the sound of tires bumping over gravel. Mira stirred awake behind me. "Dad, are you sure this is the right way? I didn't look back." I didn't need to. Her voice was tight, cautious. Not fear exactly. Something else. Kids have this way of sensing when something shifted. The same way deer freeze before a storm. "We're almost there," I said. But even I wasn't sure where there was. The road narrowed again. Trees leaned in like eavesdroppers. Headlights caught something ahead. Wooden, splintered, barely hanging on. A sign, broken clean down the middle. A sign, broken clean down the middle. Timber Run. 7 miles. Not on the map. Not anywhere, actually. The name felt like a memory someone else had, just close enough to ring true. I slowed the van. The bridge that followed groaned beneath our weight. Planks bowed, bolts rusted orange. Water moved sluggishly below. The moment we crossed, something shifted in the air. I felt it in my chest first, like the drop before a roller coaster. Then in my throat. Then behind my eyes. I told myself it was nothing. That I was just tired. That driving through a haunted patch of forest in the middle of the night with 2 sleeping kids wasn't as insane as it sounded. She used to say I could never sit still. That I was always chasing ghosts. Maybe she was right. Back at the rest stop, before I burned the journal, I'd reread her last entry 5 times. She didn't mention Timber Run. Not directly, but there were words between the words. I've learned that grief doesn't always speak clearly. Sometimes it hides in broken grammar and unfinished sentences. The headlights flickered once, then again, then came back steady. The van's dashboard read 1:19 a.m. Of course it did. I forced a smile. A lucky number, she used to say. The deeper we went, the more the world felt off. The trees were too still. The wind was too quiet. Not even the crunch of leaves beneath the tires felt real anymore. Like we were driving into a place that had forgotten sound. And then came the smell. Not rot, exactly. Older than that, like damp stone. Like something buried in earth that had started to dream again. I glanced at Mira in the rear view. She was still awake, eyes wide, staring out the window. She didn't say anything this time. She didn't have to. I took another left. We passed a row of fence posts. No fence, just the posts. Still standing, as if whatever they once held back had outlived them. Trees open to a narrow pull-off, enough space to park. I killed the engine and let the silence breathe. Mira and June stayed in the van. I stepped outside. Gravel shifted under my boots. The cold bit deep and fast. I walked a few feet out, shining my flashlight into the woods. Nothing but trees and fog and the sound of my own heartbeat echoing inside my ears. And then, a shape, not moving, not watching, just there. My light flicked past it too fast to focus. When I swung back, it was gone. Just the same damn trees. But I swear, for a second, it was watching us, waiting. I stayed out there longer than I should have. The air tasted metallic. My breath came slower. I told myself it was the altitude, the cold. I told myself a lot of things. But when I finally turned back to the van, Mira was standing by the door, holding June's stuffed rabbit like a shield. "Can we just go back?" she asked. I opened my mouth to answer. And then the wind blew. Just once, and it carried her voice. Not Mira's, hers, soft, like she was humming from under the ground, or above the trees. "Take the children to where the wind still remembers my name." The sound faded before it was real, before I could grab onto it. But I saw Mira's face go pale. She'd heard it too. I didn't answer her question. I just walked back to the fire pit, built with stones, still warm from the last campers. Though no one had been here in weeks, according to the ranger station back in Pike County. I gathered some dry twigs, lit the flame, sat down, and I waited. Waited for the fire to crackle loud enough to drown out the question inside me that never got quieter. What if this road doesn't lead to where she wanted me to go? What if it leads to where she went? The stars were colder that night, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if I was chasing her memory, or if something from her memory was starting to chase me back. The clearing opened like it had been waiting for us. A hush settled over everything when we pulled the van to a stop. No birdsong, no rustling branches, just the breath of the wind brushing the tarp above us. It was near dusk by the time we made camp. I set the stakes, hammered down the corners of the tent, double-checked the zippers. But none of that made me feel any safer. The ground here was soft, like it had swallowed something and wasn't done digesting it. The trees stood wide and still, their roots bulging up from the earth like veins. And above them, the sky kept changing. Blue to gray, gray to almost violet. then just cold. The girls bundled in their jackets, shivering, even though I swore it wasn't that cold before. Mira sat cross-legged near the campfire pit, while June crouched by the edge of the clearing, poking at something half buried in the mud. The kind of quiet they had wasn't peaceful. It was listening. June made this small sound in her throat and held something up. It was a tooth. Dried. Yellow. Long. Too long to be a deer. Not sharp, but curved. It looked like it had come from something ancient. I knelt down and took it gently from her hands. The surface was rough, like time had scraped away its memory. Mira leaned in, camera in hand. An old Polaroid had brought out of storage because she liked things that felt slow. One click, the flash popped, and out came the picture, humming softly as it developed. She held it in her fingers, stared. There was something in the frame. Something behind her. She didn't speak, just furrowed her brow and looked closer, like she couldn't quite make sense of what her eyes were seeing. A smudge in the trees. Tall, fuzzy, too big to be a shadow, but too quiet to be a person. I took the photo from her hand, tried to play it down. Light must have bounced weird off the trees, I said. But it didn't feel like light. It felt like a presence. She didn't believe me. Didn't say it, but I saw it in the way her shoulders pulled in. She tucked the picture into her coat pocket. June was already distracted again, dragging sticks into shapes in the dirt like a ritual she'd invented on the spot. The cold got sharper after that. I built a fire, but it took longer than usual to catch. Like the wood didn't want to burn. Like even the flame was reluctant to be here. I wrapped the girls in the old plaid blanket from the back of the van, and Mira nestled close to her sister, her eyes flicking toward the darkening line of the trees. She asked if I would tell a story. So I did. I told them how their mother used to dream strange things. Not scary, but different. She'd wake up crying and couldn't explain why. Said there was something with eyes that looked too human and hands that didn't belong to any animal. But it never hurt her. It just watched. Sometimes it sang, soft like a lullaby coming from far off, echoing through the trees. She used to say it was a mother, a lost one, who wandered the woods looking for something that could never be returned. I didn't expect them to fall asleep after that, but they did. Fast. Like something had worn them down quicker than normal. Mira's camera was still in her hands, resting on her chest. I slipped it out carefully and placed it by the tent entrance. Then I sat by the fire and watched the flames collapse in on themselves. There were moments in my life when the world felt just a little too thin, like I could see through it if I looked hard enough. Tonight was one of those, the kind where time folds a little and the past starts whispering through the cracks. Somewhere in the dark something moved. Not loud, not near, but it was there, a shift in the air. The kind of sound you don't hear so much as I feel, like a memory brushing past your skin. I stood, flashlight in hand, and scanned the tree line. Nothing, but I didn't go far. I stayed close, pacing the border of the clearing, like I could hold the dark at bay just by staying awake. I must have walked circles for hours. When I finally crawled into the tent, the girls hadn't stirred once. That was when I saw it, the flash. Just one, quick, sharp, from Mira's camera. It fired on its own. The lens pointed toward the side wall of the tent. My heart kicked. I sat up straight, stared at the camera, and waited. Nothing. No sound. No sound! I stepped out of the tent into the cold again. The wind had picked up slightly, threading through the trees in quiet, careful strokes. But I saw nothing. No footprints. No eyes. Just the usual silence trying harder than ever to stay still. I picked up the Polaroid. It was blank at first. Then it developed. There, just at the edge of the image, was a blur. Larger than before. Closer than before, like something had stood inches from the tent, listening, watching. I turned slowly toward the trees, nothing but blackened branches. But I swear it wasn't gone. It had just stepped back. Out of reach. The fire had burned itself to a glow. Cold moved in fast now, pushing at the edges of the tent, seeping into the seams. I zipped it shut, pulled the girls closer, and tried to breathe like none of this meant anything. Tried to believe it was just another weird night in the woods. But even then, with both daughters asleep against me, I knew the woods weren't done with us. Not yet. And whatever was out there, it was getting closer. It started with the wind, a sharp hiss slicing through the trees like a warning, like the forest was sucking in its breath. Then came June's scream. I bolted upright, heart punching my chest before my eyes even opened. The zipper of the tent gave under my shaking hands as I stumbled out into the cold. My breath came out in clouds. My boots hit the ground hard. The fire was out. The clearing was darker than I remember, and June was standing in the middle of it, alone, her face twisted, her little fists clenched at her sides. "She's gone!" she cried, pointing at the tent. "Mira's not in there. She's not. I was already inside before she finished." The sleeping bag was open, empty. Her coat was still there. Her rabbit was there. Her camera was gone. My brain didn't have time to panic. It just locked into motion. I shouted her name into the trees like it was a flare. "Mira! Mira! Mira!" I grabbed the flashlight, tore across the edge of the clearing, sweeping the beam left to right, fast and wild. I called again. Trees answered with creaks. Then I saw it. About 10 yards out, in the soft mud, one footprint, not hers. Bigger, much bigger. I stepped closer. It was deep, almost a full inch pressed down. Toes splayed. Wide arch. Whatever made it hadn't been running. It had walked, calm, confident. I found Mira's beanie just beyond the print. Damp, crushed. My fingers shook as I picked it up. June had followed me. I told her to stay by the tent, but she didn't. She never did. Her voice was small, shaky. "She went with someone, Dad." My blood iced. "What do you mean?" She looked past me, into the trees. She wasn't scared. I saw her go. There was a lady, big, like really big. Hair all over. But her eyes were soft. She didn't talk. But I heard something, like humming. My mouth was dry. She was singing. My knees hit the earth before I realized I'd dropped. I clenched Mira's beanie in my hand and stared into the woods like they might give her back if I just stared hard enough. Then I stood. I ran. I don't know how far. I called until my throat burned. My flashlight jumped from trunk to trunk. Every tree started to look like a person. Then I stepped wrong, twisted my ankle. But I didn't stop. I pushed deeper. The trail got narrow, then wider, then disappeared entirely. I followed broken branches, bent grass, tiny clues that could have meant anything. Then I smelled it, not the forest. Something sour, wet, like old meat and wet fur. Bones. They were scattered in a half circle, like something had been chewing. Some still had gristle. I crouched down. Not deer. Not anything I recognized. The edges of the bones were crushed, like they'd been broken open. The smell was worse up close. Then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong to anything I knew. A voice, but not words. Something low, melodic, a lullaby, but older, thicker. It echoed, not just through the air, but through the dirt. It felt like it came from below my ribs, pulling something out of me I didn't know it was still there, and I ran toward it. I don't remember deciding to move. My body just did. My flashlight caught flickers of something big moving between the trees, just ahead. Never quite visible, but I could hear it. Not the steps, not the breathing, the singing. It wasn't human, but it wasn't monstrous either. I stopped when the trees broke open into a gully filled with mist. I stood at the edge, chest heaving, and listened. The voice had stopped. Silence again. This time. Heavier, pressing. I didn't know where I was. I turned around and the path was gone. I could still feel the warmth from where something had passed, like the air itself had parted and hadn't closed back yet. Then a memory slammed into me without warning. My wife, in that hospital bed. Eyes dull. Hand cold in mine. Her lips had moved. Not for me, but for someone else. For something else. Take them there. She had whispered. Where the wind still remembers my name. I never asked her what it meant. I thought it was just the meds, the fever. I was wrong. I took a slow step forward, then another. A branch snapped behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But I didn't feel alone. The gully seemed to lean in. I felt watched, not hunted, just observed. My voice cracked when I said her name again. Mira. And for a moment, I swore I heard my name back. Soft, distant. Not an echo. I stood there shaking until my legs gave. Shaking until my legs gave. I sat in the mud, arms around my knees like a kid lost at a state fair, trying not to let the tears fall too fast. Not here. Not now. I couldn't lose her, not after I'd already lost so much. The wind shifted. Leaves danced around me like they were trying to point me in a direction I couldn't see. I didn't find her that night. I stumbled back to camp close to dawn, face scratched, flashlight dead, hands frozen. June was curled inside the tent, still awake, waiting. She didn't ask if I found her. She just opened the flap and moved over so I could collapse beside her. I held her tight, my mind running loops of that sound. That song, the look on her face when she said Mira wasn't afraid. I replayed every second, every word, every breath. And somewhere just outside the tent, I swear I heard humming again. Fainter now, but still there. The fog was thicker than I'd ever seen. It didn't drift or move like mist normally does. It clung. It crawled between the trees and pressed low to the forest floor like it had weight, like it had intent. My boots sank into the damp soil as I moved, each step slower than the last. My flashlight cut a narrow path through the haze, but it didn't help much. Everything ahead stayed buried in that pale gray soup. I could hear the trees breathing around me, every creak, every shift of bark. The pine needles whispered under my feet like they didn't want me here. Then the beam caught something, not far. Motionless, a pair of eyes, golden, reflective. Too wide apart for a deer, too high up for anything I'd expect to find out here. They didn't blink. I froze. My breath hitched in my throat, stuck somewhere between a sob and a warning. I raised the flashlight slowly, the circle of light lifting up the trunk of an enormous pine. And there she was, Mira. She was wrapped in something like fur, sitting on the ground against the base of the tree. Her face turned toward the light. She didn't look scared. Not at all. She smiled. Her eyes were clear, calm. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I stepped forward maybe 2 feet, and that's when I saw what had been behind her. It stood at least 8 feet tall, maybe more, covered in dark brown hair matted by leaves and twigs. Not like the sketches or campfire stories. This wasn't some blurry monster in the corner of a frame. This was real. Its body was massive but not disproportionate. Its arms hung low, and in one of its large hands it held Mira. Not tightly, not forcefully, cradled. Like you'd hold a toddler who'd fallen asleep on the floor. Its face, that's the part that doesn't leave me. It wasn't animal. It wasn't human either. But it was closing. Broad cheekbones, wide mouth, deep-set eyes that held something ancient and wounded. Not rage, not menace, just sadness. A kind of weathered grief that made my chest ache. I reached for my side. I don't even remember doing it, but the barrel of the pistol was in my hand before I could stop myself. My fingers trembled. I raised it. Just halfway, and Mira turned her head. "Don't hurt her," she said, calm, firm, like she understood something I didn't. The thing didn't move, didn't growl. It just stood there, watching me with those amber eyes. I could see its chest rising and falling slowly. Mira looked up at it again, then back at me. She wasn't afraid. If anything, she seemed protective. My arms dropped to my sides. It didn't run, didn't retreat. It simply shifted, cradling Mira against its shoulder. Then, slowly, like it wanted me to see every part of the gesture, it turned its body. That's when I noticed the cloth, draped across its chest. Part of it was tangled in the fur, but enough was exposed for me to see it clearly. Red, faded, stained. I recognized it instantly. It was a scarf, a handmade one, the stitching crooked, the fabric soft and uneven. My wife had made it for our baby, the one we lost before Mira was even born. I remember the night she finished it, sitting by the fireplace, humming that same lullaby under her breath, tears drying on her cheeks while she wove each thread. We buried that scarf with the baby, or at least we thought we did. My knees gave a little under me, and I had to grip a tree just to keep from falling. The air grew thinner somehow, pressing tight into my lungs like it didn't want me to breathe. Mira reached out a hand toward me, not in panic, not to be rescued, just to let me know she was okay, and I couldn't move. The creature, shifted her gaze back toward me. Her expression hadn't changed, but something passed between us. Not language, not thought. Just a recognition, a shared brutal ache, a knowing. She began to step back, still holding Mira, still slow. I should have screamed. I should have lunged forward. I should have begged. But I didn't, because there was something in her face that told me she wasn't taking Mira. Not really. She was borrowing her. Or maybe returning something. We stayed like that. All three of us caught in the glow of the flashlight, in a moment that felt stolen from the rest of the world. Then she vanished into the trees. No snap of branches, no heavy footsteps, just gone. The fog swallowed her like it had been waiting. I stood there long after they were gone, heart still pounding like I'd been running for miles. The silence was thick now, and something in me knew this wasn't over. I turned back, my hands still shaking. I whispered Mira's name once, quietly, just to hear it. Just to remember the shape of it in my mouth. The forest didn't answer, but it didn't close behind her either. Not yet. I don't remember when I dropped the gun. 1 minute it was in my hand, slick with sweat and shaking like hell. The next, it was somewhere behind me, forgotten, useless. I was on my knees in the wet dirt, my arms open, palms out. My voice came out raw, hoarse, barely louder than the wind moving through the trees. "If you know what it means to lose a child," I said, "then you know I'd trade everything I've got to bring mine home." The words didn't echo. They just disappeared, swallowed by the woods. But I know she heard them. I felt it. She stepped forward slowly, careful like she thought I might bolt. Her body towered over me, but she moved with a gentleness I couldn't explain. Mira was still in her arms, small and still, her eyes wide but calm. No tears, no panic, just trust. I didn't deserve it. The creature, Seneca, I would later learn to call her, hesitated. Her massive hand trembled slightly as she lowered Mira to the ground. Not like she was giving her up, but more like she was placing something sacred back where it belonged. Mira didn't move at first. She looked up at Seneca, then at me, then back at her. She gave the faintest nod, It shattered me. I reached out. My arms swallowed Mira whole as I pulled her against my chest, her small body warm and solid, her hair smelling like leaves and wood smoke. She didn't say anything. She just pressed her cheek into my shoulder, and I could feel her breathing, steady, alive. I didn't cry. Not yet. There wasn't space for it. I looked up at Seneca. She didn't step back. She didn't snarl or vanish. She just stood there, watching us with those heavy, sunken eyes that looked more human than anything else I'd seen in days. There was something hanging from her neck. A crude necklace strung together with tiny, weathered bones. I didn't register what they were until Mira shifted slightly, and my fingers brushed against her fur-covered chest. It wasn't just bones. It was baby teeth. Dozens of them, smoothed by time and maybe tears, worn down like they'd been handled again and again, like a rosary of grief. I froze. Her eyes dropped, just for a moment, to my hand. Not angry, not possessive, just tired. There was no malice in her, only weight. Like every step she took through this world cost her something. I don't know what she saw in me, kneeling there in the dirt, clutching my daughter like a drowning man to driftwood. But I think something about it made her understand. She stepped back. Not quickly. Not in fear. She just gave us space. I looked down at Mira. Her lips moved like she was trying to say something but couldn't find the right words. I didn't press her. My hand brushed her hair back, and I whispered, "It's okay. I've got you." And then something changed. It wasn't sound. Not really. It was a flicker, like a memory, but not mine. Images, maybe. A flash of lightning over water. Rain pounding through the canopy. A scream. Not mine, not Mira's. Echoing through the trees. I blinked. For a second, I wasn't in my body anymore. I was somewhere else, looking down at a tiny form curled beside a riverbank. Fur matted, chest still, eyes half open, dead. Seneca was kneeling, cradling it like she had Mira. Rocking, wailing. The sound was so raw it felt like it tore the air apart. Then it was gone. I gasped. Mira looked up. Startled. I realized my whole body was shaking. I think she showed me that. Not as punishment, but as a confession. I met her eyes again. This time, I didn't see a creature. I saw a mother. I whispered, "I'm sorry," and I meant it in ways I'll never fully understand. She stepped deeper into the fog. The woods seemed to part for her. Or maybe she belonged to them in a way I never could. One moment she was there, the next, gone. But it didn't feel like a vanishing act. It felt like she'd returned to wherever the pain went when it couldn't stay visible anymore. Mira was quiet all the way back to camp. I carried her most of the way, her arms around my neck, her heart against mine, like an extra beat I'd been missing. When we reached the tent, June came running. She didn't ask questions. She just wrapped her arms around her sister and held on like she was scared Mira might vanish again if she blinked. I let them be. I sat at the edge of the fire pit, knees pulled up to my chest, staring into the cold ashes. At some point, Mira slipped beside me. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, in the smallest voice, she said, "She wasn't bad, Dad. She was just sad." I nodded. "She lost someone," she added. I didn't know how she knew that. Maybe she saw what I saw. Maybe she didn't need to. "I know," I said. "I think that's why she let you go." Mira looked at me, her eyes so much older than they'd been a day ago. Did we forgive her? I swallowed hard. I think she forgave us first. And we sat there, under the stars that peeked through the clearing like they'd been watching the whole time. The night didn't feel as sharp anymore. The cold didn't bite the way it had before, and the woods, while still vast, still wild, felt a little less like they were trying to swallow us whole. Maybe they were giving us back, or maybe They were just waiting for us to understand. Some things aren't meant to be tamed. Some griefs don't disappear. They change shape. They walk upright. They carry memories around their neck. They sing lullabies in voices older than language. And if you're quiet enough, if you open yourself to it, you might just hear them say goodbye. The cabin looked like it had grown out of the forest itself. Slumped low, between trees slick with moss and shadow, almost hidden by the bend in the trail, like it didn't want to be found. Its roof sagged under decades of pine needles and time. The front steps creaked beneath my boots, and I hesitated there, hand on the rail, listening. No bird song, no wind, just the quiet hum of the woods holding its breath. I didn't bring the girls. I told them to stay by the van. Locked in, engine running. I parked close enough to hear if anything happened, but far enough they couldn't see me walk toward this place. I needed answers, and something told me this was where they'd be. I knocked. No response. The wood felt soft under my knuckles, almost spongy. I knocked again. Then a voice, raw as gravel but sharp, cut through the crack in the door. Either come in or leave. Don't knock like you're waiting for someone to save you. So I pushed the door open. Inside, the smell hit first. Earthy, wet, mold and candle wax and old paper. The place was a time capsule. Everything wooden, everything hand-stitched, everything still. Dust hung in the air like it didn't get disturbed often. She was sitting by the window, back to me, facing out into the trees. "Name's Abigail May," she said without turning. "Lived out here 50 years, give or take." I didn't answer right away. She turned, just enough for me to catch her profile. Lined skin, a long braid the color of frost, eyes that had seen too much. She looked at me like she already knew what I was carrying. "You're not the first to come looking," she said. "But you might be the first to come after making it out." She nodded to a wooden stool across from her and poured tea into a chipped mug without asking. I sat. The steam carried something familiar. Juniper, birch, and underneath, a bitterness that tasted like root and memory. I told her what I'd seen. All of it. She listened without blinking. When I finished, she reached for a worn leather pouch and pulled out a bundle of papers, sketches, all hand-drawn, faces in charcoal, eyes with too much depth. One of them looked almost exactly like her, Seneca, taller in the sketch, mouth open in what could have been a cry or a song. Abigail laid them out on the floor like pieces of a puzzle. "They come and go," she said, "when they want, when they need. Most folks never see. Most who do don't live long enough to talk about it." I kept my eyes on the drawing. "She didn't hurt her," I said. "She brought her back." "That's rare," Abigail said. "But not unheard of. Depends on the pain. Theirs and yours." She turned another drawing over. It showed a silhouette of a woman cradling a child too small, too limp. "They don't cry like we do," she whispered, "but they grieve. Just the same." Her fingers ran across a carving on the wall behind her, a row of overlapping footprints, some massive, some barely the size of a child's hand. The Lenape called her Nukuatakwi, the Morning Mother, she said. "They believe the forest made her from sorrow, that she comes when things fall out of balance, when the land is wounded, or when grief gets too loud to bear." I leaned forward. "She had a scarf," I told her. "Red. Same one my wife made for the baby we lost." Abigail didn't react for a long time. Then she stood and walked to a cedar chest in the corner. From it, she pulled a worn binder, yellowed and brittle. Inside were clippings, reports, disappearances, all from around this area. One caught my eye. A child missing 5 years ago, 4 years old. Last seen in Timber Run. She was sighted then too, Abigail said. Carrying something small, pale, definitely human. But no one believed it. Sheriff called it hysteria. The picture was grainy, but I saw her shape in the background, half lost in fog, just like the Polaroid from Mira's camera. She's not evil, I said, more to myself than to her. Just broken. Abigail nodded. Maybe she sees herself in the ones left behind, she said. Maybe she thinks she's giving them what she lost. We sat there in silence for a long time. A crow called outside. The light shifted. I asked a question that had been tearing at me since the first night in those woods. Is she the last? Abigail didn't look at me. Her voice came low. No. But she might be the loneliest. And something about that stuck in my chest. Not like fear. Not like guilt. Something heavier. A sense of responsibility that didn't feel earned. I thanked her and stood to leave. At the door, she stopped me with one more sentence. If she gave your child back, you should leave her something too. A sign. A thank you. They understand more than we think. I nodded. I stepped outside. The sky had shifted. A storm was threatening at the edge of the ridgeline. Wind pushed the treetops in slow waves. I looked back once. Abigail was watching from the window. Inside that crooked cabin surrounded by stories too old for books. She looked more rooted than any of the trees. The path back to the van felt shorter. Mira was sleeping. June, reading one of the books she'd dragged along. The engine hummed. I sat behind the wheel, hands gripping it tight. The forest didn't feel any safer. But it felt clearer. Something inside it had changed. Or maybe it was just me. Either way, I knew we weren't finished yet. Not even close. We left just after first light. No dramatic goodbye, no last look over the shoulder. I didn't want to give the forest the satisfaction of thinking it still had a hold on us. The van rumbled to life under my hands like it was waking from its own strange dream. June climbed into the back seat without a word. Mira, though, she paused, just long enough to tilt her face toward the tree line, like she was listening for something only she could hear. She buckled herself in. The scarf still hung from her backpack strap. I watched it flutter in the morning breeze as we crossed back over the same sagging wooden bridge we'd come in on. The same boards creaked. The same river flowed under our wheels. But everything felt different. Heavier. Like we were hauling more than gear and memory. Like the woods had put something inside us we'd never quite shake loose. The sunlight spilled over the road in long streaks, golden and soft. Fog still clung low between the trees, curling around the tires as we climbed. Mira turned her head and stared out the window, her fingers tracing something invisible on the glass. I didn't ask what she was thinking. I already knew. She said, "Dad, if she had a mother, where do you think she is now?" It hit me in the gut. Not because I had an answer, but because of the way she asked it. Not with fear, not with pity, but with this odd, childlike compassion that carried the weight of someone who had seen too much too young. I didn't answer right away. Just kept driving. Let the quiet stretch. Then, without a word, I pulled over near a clearing where the tree branches arched in like arms. I stepped out. Mira followed. June stayed in the van, chin resting on her knees, watching us like she was trying to memorize every detail for later. I walked to the closest pine and pulled the red scarf from Mira's pack. Tied it carefully to a low branch, tight, but not strangling it. Let the wind catch its end. It danced, slow and small. A flare, a signal. Not asking for anything, just saying, "I remember. I saw you." Mira came up beside me. She didn't say anything. Just watched it flap in the breeze. Then she turned her head slightly and said, "I had a dream." I knelt beside her. "Tell me, there was a baby," she said. I was not a human one, but small, like June. All gray fur, like rain clouds. It was curled up in someone's arms. I couldn't see their face. Only the hands. They were huge, but they were rocking it. Gentle, like Mom used to rock us. I stared at Mira, I said quietly. "You've never seen that baby." "How could you know?" She shrugged. "I just do." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the Polaroid camera, the same one that had taken that first blurry picture of the shadow in the trees. She raised it, pointed toward the scarf. The click was sharp in the stillness. The photo slid out, whirring softly as it developed. I watched her shake it gently, then stare down at it with that same expression she wore when she solved a puzzle or found meaning in something no one else could. She didn't show it to me, just folded it and slipped it into her pocket. Back in the van, the girls dozed off not long after we hit pavement again. The mountains faded behind us, and I could feel the distance building like a wall, but not one I wanted to tear down. Some things need to stay wild. Some griefs need their own soil. I thought about what Abigail May said about balance, about the land remembering when it's been wronged, about how some beings only appear when something precious has been taken. It made me wonder if the forest had answered our pain with its own. Maybe that's what Seneca was. A wound walking, a memory carved into flesh and fur. A mother with no child and too many lullabies still stuck in her throat. Or maybe she was just the last one left who still remembered how to love through the grief. I looked in the rear view. Mira was still asleep, but her hand was resting on June's back, protective even in dreams. The Polaroid poked out from her pocket, a tiny edge of light and shadow and meaning. I don't know what she saw in it, but I know this much. That forest gave her something I never could, and in return, we left something behind. Not just the scarf, but understanding. The kind that doesn't come with words. The kind that lingers. In roots. In bones. In the way wind moves when it has no direction but carries the weight of memory anyway. We didn't talk much the rest of the drive. We didn't need to. The forest wasn't done with us. But we were done being afraid of it. The letter wasn't long. A single paragraph, handwritten in plain blue ink on a sheet of college-ruled paper. I folded it once, carefully, and slipped it into a plain envelope without a return address. I didn't need one. They wouldn't write back. That wasn't the point. I drove out to the edge of town that morning. Fog hung low, brushing the fence lines and sagging over the ditch like it was reluctant to leave the woods behind. The university's anthropology building stood tall but aging, brick wrapped in ivy and silence. I dropped the envelope into the metal box near the service entrance, then pressed my palm flat to the cool surface like I was leaving something else behind too. Inside that envelope was the photo. The first one. The one from the clearing. Mira in frame, smiling. And behind her, blurred but unmistakable, that shape, that presence. The mother of the forest. Seneca. Under the photo, I'd written, "Some things aren't meant to be proven, only felt." I walked back to the truck without looking back. Later that week, Mira taped a drawing to the inside of the passenger side window. She didn't ask. She didn't explain. Just smoothed the edges with her hands and stepped back like she was hanging it in a gallery. It was crude, drawn in colored pencil and fading marker, but the lines were clear. A tall figure, all browns and grays, stood in the center, hair flowing like bark, arms long but soft. In one hand she held a red scarf, in the other, something smaller, a blur, a child maybe, or a memory. Below her feet, the words Mira had written in red crayon, "Forest Mother." I asked if she wanted to take it down before the next drive. She shook her head. She's riding with us now. We didn't talk about what happened much after that, not in detail. But sometimes, in the evenings when the house was quiet, Mira would hum a tune I'd heard before, but couldn't place. Low and winding, like water sliding through roots. June would curl beside her and hum along like she'd known it her whole life, and I'd sit in the kitchen and feel it stir something under my ribs. Something deeper than blood or memory. A few nights later, I couldn't sleep. I went out back, stood beneath the old oak by the fence line, and looked up at the stars. The wind moved through the branches like it had something to say, but I wasn't ready to listen just yet. Then, at the edge of the woods, I saw something shift. Not a sound, not a shadow, just presence. I didn't move, didn't call out, but the air felt full again, like it had back there, in that clearing, when time felt thinner and pain felt visible. I stayed until the cold sank into my bones and the dew slicked the grass beneath my feet, and then I whispered, not to the trees, not to the dark, but to the space between all of it. Thank you. Weeks passed. Then months. The girls returned to their rhythms. School, laughter, fights over cereal, the normal things that feel like miracles after you've nearly lost them. I watched them with a new kind of ache. Not fear, not guilt, just awareness of how fragile we are, of how close we live to things we'll never fully understand. One afternoon, Mira came home with dirt on her knees and sap on her sleeves. I asked where she'd been. She shrugged. There was a rabbit stuck in the old fence. I helped him get out. I nodded, but something about the way she said it, calm, assured, like it wasn't a big deal, made me realize it wasn't just a rabbit she'd seen. She was starting to hear the forest, and the forest, maybe, was starting to hear her. I don't believe in monsters anymore. Not the way I used to. There are wild things, yes. Strange things. Beings that move through the spaces we forget to notice. But monster is the word we give to what we refuse to understand. Seneca wasn't a monster. She was a mother. One who had lost everything, and still chose to give something back. That red scarf still hangs in the tree. Sometimes I think about taking it down, but every time I get close, the wind kicks up just slightly, the ends lift, the knot tugs, and I leave it, a signal, a thank you, a promise. The forest hasn't called us back, but I feel it out there, breathing, alive, healing, alive, healing. Some days, I wonder if she ever found another, a child left behind, a soul half forgotten, something to cradle again. And I hope wherever she is, her arms are full. Sometimes the wildest places aren't found on any map. They live in the quiet spaces between grief and grace, where pain echoes like footsteps through the trees and healing moves as slowly as moss across stone. In those forgotten hollows, far from cities, beyond logic, outside of time, we're reminded that not everything that exists can be named, and not everything that's lost is gone. There are forces out there older than memory, not evil, not good, just aching, just watching, just surviving the only way they know how. We grow up thinking nature is something separate from us, something to be conquered, documented, or ignored, but sometimes if you listen closely enough, if you really listen, you'll realize nature has been mourning alongside us all along. Love doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes it hums like wind through pine needles. Sometimes it waits at the edge of the firelight. Sometimes it doesn't look anything like we expect. And still, it cradles us when we need it most. And loss, it changes us, not just in the leaving, but in what it leaves behind. The scars we carry become maps, not to what we've escaped, but to what we've survived. And in that survival, we grow gentler. We begin to understand that the deepest kind of strength isn't how long we can hold on. It's how willingly we can let go with love. Because in the end, what matters isn't proof. It's presence. Not the answers, but the asking. Not how loud we scream into the dark, but how quietly we sit with it until it softens. So wherever you are right now, whether you're standing at the edge of something vast or quietly trying to mend what's broken inside, may you always find the courage to stay open, to see what's overlooked, to forgive what's misunderstood, and to remember that even in the loneliest corners of the world, compassion can take root in the most unexpected forms. Thank you for walking this path with me. If this story meant something to you, even in the smallest way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and follow the channel. There are still so many stories waiting to be told. And who knows, one of them might just be yours.